to another edition of Thunderdome. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and ding that bell. Welcome to part 3 of chapter 5 in unit 4 about learning. Let's get started. All right, shaping and maintaining behavior. B.F. Skinner created the operant chamber / Skinner box right here. And it's pretty interesting to watch, so if you do get time, click this. You'll see a rat pressing a lever over and over again to get food when the green light is on. But if the red light was on and he pressed the lever, he'd get shocked. But a non-damaging shock. So he created the operant chamber, an experimental apparatus invented by B.F. Skinner to study the relationship between environmental events and active behavior. So a small cage with a food dispenser. Attached is a device that records the number of operants made by the experimental animal. So a lever for rats, you'll see it right here, and then a dish for pigeons, because pigeons can't press levers, but they can peck a dish. Food pellets are used for positive reinforcement, meaning that you have added something to reinforce the particular behavior that you are looking for. The light in the cage functions as a discriminative stimulus, meaning that is the thing that turns everybody on. Okay, the rat knows to do his thing. Everybody knows that this is that moment when the discriminative stimulus is on. When a rat is first placed in a Skinner box, typically it explores the new environment, occasionally nudging or pressing the bar. In the process, the researcher can accelerate the rat's bar pressing behavior through a process called shaping. Shaping is a procedure of selectively reinforcing successfully closer approximations of goal behavior until the goal behavior is displayed. My example for this, for shaping, is usually, Johnny Susie's scared to go down the slide. So here we go. We have a slide. It's pretty high. It's one of those metal ones that will burn you as soon as you get on it because it's been baking in the sun all day. So here we are. We're at the top of the slide. Johnny Susie says, "No, I don't want to do it." So you get Johnny Susie to come on down. All right? Now, you set Johnny Susie on the end of the slide and you say, "Look, this isn't too bad. The slide isn't too bad." And they jump off of it and you give them a Werther's. Hopefully I end up sponsored by Werther's at the end of this. You give them a Werther's. And then they're like, "Ooh, cool, candy, I was on the slide." Then you bring Johnny Susie up, halfway up the slide. You let go of Johnny Susie, boom. There we go. Oh my gosh, see, you went halfway down the slide. Here's another Werther's. You're shaping the correct behavior. Then all of a sudden Johnny Susie climbs up to the top. They climb up to the top, you give them a Werther's up there and you say, "Great job, now go down the slide and I'll give you 2 more. Boom, you're shaping the correct behavior, but you used approximations of the correct behavior to get there. Okay, so that is what shaping is. The partial reinforcement effect. This is where you find out that continuous reinforcement is super weak. Okay? Partial reinforcement effect is a phenomenon in which behaviors that are conditioned using partial reinforcement are more resistant to extinction than behaviors that are conditioned using continuous reinforcement. So continuous reinforcement is always getting reinforced, in which every occurrence of a particular response is reinforced. You know, I coach baseball, and obviously, let's say that I was a good job coach. And to me, that's this. After every play you make, I say good job. Every single play. You come off the field, good job. All right, you make a routine play, good job. You make a spectacular play, good job. What do you expect me to say after everything that you do? Good job. All right, it loses its flavor. It's not as strong as it once was because I always do it. Partial reinforcement, a situation in which the occurrence of a particular response is only sometimes followed by a reinforcer, is resistant to extinction. It will never go away. So I'm not a good job coach in baseball. If you do your job and you do routine stuff, you don't get anything from me. But if you do that spectacular play and you're, constantly, maybe you hustled one time more than I've seen you hustle in the entire season, then I'll hit you with a good job, and you'll never know when that good job is coming. That right there is resistant to extinction. What is extinction in operant conditioning? The gradual weakening of a disappearance of conditioned behavior. In operant conditioning, extinction occurs when an admitted behavior is no longer followed by a reinforcer. All right. Schedules of reinforcement. These are confusing, so please focus here and know. Really, all you need to know is the definition of 4 particular terms, and then they're all combined. So you have fixed and variable. Fixed means certain, variable means on average. And then you have interval, which means time, and ratio, which means number. So here we go. Schedule of reinforcement. The delivery of a reinforcer according to a preset pattern based on the number of responses or the time interval between responses. So here we have fixed ratio schedule. All right, so that means certain number. So a reinforcement schedule in which the reinforcer is delivered after a fixed number of responses has occurred. You're paid $1 for every envelope you stuff. Give me that job. I don't know what, where, or how I can get that job. One, I don't know what it is, but I like to lick envelopes for some reason. A lot of people don't. I don't know why, it's like a good taste for me. I'll make $500 a day. You couldn't stop me. Be the richest envelope stuffer you've ever seen. Paid $1 for every envelope you stuff. That's what it is. So one envelope, $1. That is fixed ratio. Variable ratio schedule. A reinforcement schedule in which a reinforcer is delivered after an average number of responses, which varies unpredictably from trial to trial. Average number, unpredictable. All right, that's what this right here means. Variable ratio. We don't know when it's coming, but we know if we do it enough, it is going to come. Okay? So, gambling. You know, I'm at a slot machine and I pull the lever, I don't get anything. I put money in, I pull the lever again, I don't get anything. But if I sit there and I put money in and I pull the lever enough times, I'm going to get mad money eventually. Right? I mean, if I do it enough, if I sit there long enough and pull that lever, that's the number of times I'm doing it, right? I don't know how many times it's going to take, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to keep on pulling until I get $500 in coins.
Young money, cash money!
That's right. So, fixed interval, this is just a certain amount of time. Certain amount of time. A reinforcement schedule in which a reinforcer is delivered for the first response that occurs after a preset time interval has elapsed. Paid bi-weekly or monthly. We're talking about salary. I think whenever you're younger, you probably have a better chance of getting paid weekly or bi-weekly, but you know that every Thursday you're going to get your paycheck. A teacher gets paid at the last day of every month. That's it. One time a month for 10 months a year. 10 paychecks every single year. Fixed interval. That's what it is. All right, variable interval. We don't know when it's coming. That's variable. And this is time. So an average, unpredictable amount of time is what we're talking about. A reinforcement schedule in which a reinforcer is delivered for the first response that occurs after an average time interval, which varies unpredictably from trial to trial. This says checking for new followers on Instagram. You know that if you just wait long enough, eventually you're going to have a new follower. You didn't do anything. You didn't pull a lever. You didn't do a number of responses or anything like that. Just eventually you're going to have a new follower. I think the better example is fishing. When you sit there, you know, you throw the line in, there it is. You're sitting there, you're waiting, you're at the end of the pier, and it's just a matter of time. It's a matter of time until something bites. And you don't know how long that's going to take. So that's variable interval. All right, behavior modification. This is kind of we'll go into this, but cognitive behavioral therapy, so changing behaviors to, change your way of life positively. So behavior modification, the application of learning principles to help people develop more effective or adaptive behaviors. So here's some examples. Stop smoking. To stop smoking, I buy cinnamon candies that I eat every time I crave a cigarette. In turn, it allows me to save money, candies are cheaper, while still fixing the oral stimulation needed at the time of the cravings. Cool. Behavior modifications. I turned craving cigarettes into eating cinnamon candies. People have done that, and it works. Piles on the floor. Before I go to class, I make a pile of the materials I need in front of my door. The pile has to be in a location that I have to step over before I walk out. Again, the pile serves as a discriminative stimulus for the behavior of picking up the pile and bringing it. In fact, I often have to admonish visitors not to pick up the pile, so guess what? I can still remember to do it, right? If I was telling my wife that, hey, I set my bag in front of the door, don't move it, I need to step over it and remember to bring it to school tomorrow. That's it. Put it on my chair. This reminds me of working in engineering in my 20s. Over the years, I've conditioned my colleagues not to put items on my desk. They will be lost forever. Instead, I reward them for putting those items in my chair. If they do, I am guaranteed to see them because I will not sit down without picking them up and looking at them. I worked in an engineering firm for a long time. Occasionally, I'd have to answer a phone and say this. Right Angle Engineering, this is Travis, and then they would say, hey, is so-and-so there? And I'd say, no, that's why I'm answering the phone. And they say, well, you want to leave a message? And then I have to write a little message on a pink slip, and then I put it on my boss's chair. Because the first time I did that, I put it on my boss's desk. And guess what? If you've ever seen a professional's desk, aka an engineer's desk, whoa, it's messy, okay? So, brat prevention. Children are good operant conditioners because they are so persistent. Take the following situation, for example. A child is riding with an adult. The child is thirsty. So the child asks to stop and get a drink. The adult says no. The child asks again and again and again. Finally, the adult gives in, saying, all right, just this once. Big mistake, right? Why? The adult has now put the child on a partial schedule, guaranteeing a repetition of the same behavior later on. Because if you ask enough, you'll get what you want. And that is resistant to extinction. So they would keep on doing that forever. Instead, the adult should have said, all right, I'll get you a drink if you don't ask for one for the next 10 minutes. Then the adult is providing the child with positive reinforcement for being quiet, actually reinforcing a correct behavior. And then here we go, everybody. This is how we break up with people. College students often want to end a relationship. Again, they should realize that the person being dumped should not be placed on a partial schedule. If, for example, the person persists in calling or texting, then the dumper should not reinforce the calling by conversing or answering or sending a responding text. If you do that, you're putting the dumpee, the person who got broken up with, on a partial reinforcement schedule, meaning that if they contact you or send enough messages, that they will get a response out of you. Have I been on both sides of this before? Yeah, I have. And it's terrible on both sides. So, further, if the dumper agrees to go out on occasion, real problems will occur. Many relationships show off and on patterns because of such partial reinforcement. Of course, if the dumper is not really sure the relationship is over, another set of problems exist, obviously. But yeah, I remember I had an ex-girlfriend once, and she hit me up. She said, you want to go to the movies? I was like, yeah, sure. And we went to the movies, and she chose The Notebook. And then at the end of it, we walked out, and she said, do you think that could be us one time in the future? And I said, what? Laying in the same bed, dying of Alzheimer's together? And she's like, no, together forever. I was like, no. And I left. And I never talked to her again. All right, contemporary views of operant conditioning. We have Edward Tolman right here. I like this guy. I like what he did. It's fun to think about. So he's an American psychologist who used the terms cognitive map and latent learning to describe experimental findings that strongly suggest that cognitive factors play a role in animal learning. So what is a cognitive map? We've all done this before, but it's Tolman's term for the mental representation of the layout of a familiar environment. He used rats in a maze to experiment with. Rats eventually built a mental representation of the maze. But yeah, think of the route you take to school. Just think about school in general. I mean, if you've been here for several years, you know this building like the back of your hand. Now, if I asked you right now how many total classrooms are actually taught in Ashley High School, you wouldn't know. But if I gave you a little incentive saying the closest person to it gets extra credit on the test, you would now access your cognitive map and use that to your abilities to find a pretty close approximation of how many classrooms are actually taught in Ashley High School. Because you can think, right? You can think about how many classrooms are in the 500s. You can think about how many classrooms are in the 300s, the 200s, and the 800s. You got to go farther, right? And now we have the learning cottages out there, so we got to add some. Yes, it's fun to say learning cottages. But latent learning, Tolman's term for learning that occurs in the absence of reinforcement but is not behaviorally demonstrated until a reinforcer becomes available. A reward or reinforcement is not necessary for learning to take place. That's so true. Is anybody rewarding you for knowing Wilmington or Carolina Beach or Monkey Junction well? Like the map of that? No, nobody is. Right? For a time, to make some extra money, because that's what teachers do, I Ubered. And I've been living in Wilmington since 1990. And then all of a sudden, I'm getting rewarded. There's an incentive for my knowledge of this town, and all of a sudden it's coming out of my brain without me even knowing. I learned the map of this town. It's in my brain. I didn't even really understand that it was completely there until I started getting incentives for it. And then I'm like, I'm taking shortcuts and cutting routes down, and people are tipping me because, man, I've never gotten here as fast as you brought me here. Oh, cool, yeah, I've lived here since 1990. All of a sudden you're getting rewarded for it, and it's increasing your abilities to access knowledge that you had no idea that you even learned. So Tolman's rats learn a maze just by exploring it for 10 days without reinforcement. So let's look at Tolman's experiment. I like this. So group one, they receive food reward every single day at the end of the maze. Okay? So you can see over here, this is the average errors in the maze. On day one, they made close to 30 errors. Okay? And as you can see, as we go along all the way to day 17, we're somewhere around 7 errors. Group 2 never received a food reward. So these rats were just in the maze. Okay? So how many errors in the first day? About the same, 29. And you can see at the end on day 17, we're looking at about 18, 17 errors. And then check this out. Here's where latent learning actually comes into play. Group 3, no food reward until the 11th day. So they chilled in the maze for 11 straight days. And then on the 11th day, they put food at the end. Look at this drop off. All right? And then on day 22, 2 errors. So they did learn without reward. And then all of a sudden reward was introduced and it's like, holy crap, look what I can do. Okay? Learned helplessness, expectations of failure, and learning to quit. Something that a lot of students are probably experiencing right now in our remote/virtual learning situation that we're in. So Martin Seligman, an American psychologist who is best known for his theory of learned helplessness and for founding the modern positive psychology movement. So what is learned helplessness? It's a phenomenon in which exposure to inescapable and uncontrollable aversive, that means that you want to avoid, aversive events produces passive behavior. He discovered this accidentally with an experiment where dogs were shocked. What a meanie. Discovered accidentally with so dogs were put in a harness and then given a harmless shock after a tone. Dogs were then put in a shuttle box where the dog could escape the shock if it jumped over a barrier. This is what it looked like up here. Dogs did not escape. They just laid down and whined and got shocked. Dogs had learned that shocks were inescapable, that was a part of their life. Here's some examples of real life stuff. Students have experienced failures in previous academic settings may feel that academic tasks and setbacks are beyond their control. Thus, when faced with the demands of exams, papers, studying, rather than rising to the challenge, they may experience feelings of learned helplessness. If a student believes that academic tasks are unpleasant, unavoidable, and beyond their control, even the slightest setback can trigger a sense of helpless passivity. Each student may be prone to engage in self-defeating responses, such as procrastinating or giving up prematurely. Now, I think a lot of people these days are putting off work, and you put off enough work, enough schoolwork, and then you look at it one day, and it's a giant pile of undone schoolwork, and you say to yourself, "Oh well, I'm not doing it." I see it a lot. And what we're going through right now. How to overcome learned helplessness. For students who experience academic learned helplessness, establishing a sense of control over their schoolwork is the first step. So seeking knowledge about course requirements and assignments and setting goals, however modest. It's almost like this saying, be 1% better than you were yesterday. Just 1%. That's not a whole lot. Be slightly better than you were yesterday. All right? So setting goals, however modest, that can be successfully met, can help students begin to acquire a sense of mastery over environmental challenges. There's a difference between high achievers and low achievers. High achievers don't pick tasks or don't pick tasks that are too challenging because they know that they might be impossible to finish. Low achievers do pick tasks that are a little too challenging. And then they say, "Oh well, I can't finish that. It was too hard to begin with." A lot of research on that. Instinctive drift. The tendency of an animal to revert to instinctive behaviors that can interfere with the performance of an operantly conditioned response, a learned response. Students of Skinner at the University of Minnesota, Keller and Marion Braylon, taught thousands of animals to perform complex tricks. They trained a chicken to play baseball. Look at old Chicken Little up there. So you pull the string, hit the ball with the bat. Instead of running to first base, it ran and chased the ball, just like it would chase a bug. It could not get away from its biological, predispositions, right? So train a raccoon to pick up 2 coins and put it in the box. Easily learn to pick up the coins. He'd rub the coins together, dip them in the box, and pull them out again, just like it would clean its food and dip it in a stream before eating. Right here, this is a good place to study the differences between classical conditioning and operant conditioning. The last thing is, a way that